Hello and welcome back into Plead Your Case, WCTV's only national sports debate show. The Atlanta Braves just won the World Series in 6 games, and speaking of one playoff ending, the talk of another playoff is coming up. The college football playoff rankings just released last night, and then to top off the episode here, we'll be talking about the NFL, what is happening with the Chiefs, and the Los Angeles Rams are pushing all the chips all in right now. So sit back and relax, because it is time to plead your case.
You're watching WCTV, where we aim to bring you the best local coverage of what you care about most. Everything from local businesses to hometown sports and the latest weather. We're keeping up to date with what you need to know about issues that affect our campus and our community. We're telling the stories that matter, celebrating our past, our future, and our potential. So tune in for all the latest buzz right here on WCTV Channel 14, Waynesburg.
For the first time since 1995, the Atlanta Braves have won the World Series, although not a lot of people expected for the Braves to win the World Series when Ronald Acuna Jr. went down with an injury on July 10th. I'm Riley Holsinger, joined alongside Joe Veneziale and Brock Owens right here on Plead Your Case. Joe, how impressive is it that the Braves were able to win the World Series despite Acuna going down?
Oh, very impressive. I believe that was basically, the purpose that they said. It's set in stone, especially when your best player does go down mid-season in his best form of his career. You have a really good team built around him, like the veteran Freddie Freeman, a decade for the Braves and in the league. And if you have those centerpieces to put together a good team to make sure that you want to make a run for the player that couldn't really do it, I feel like that was what made it impressive, especially with the whole team coming together, pitching and defensively and offensively on the hitting side with Austin Riley and Jorge Soler. Those are my two top players of the game, but it is very impressive overall for the Braves to win this one.
Yeah, a guy that you got to mention there, Freddie Freeman. Great to see him win a World Series. He's been with Atlanta for a number of years right now. Had a pretty good World Series performance and postseason performance. In the postseason, hit for .304. So, Brock, how impressive is it to you that despite the heart and soul of the team and Acuna Jr. goes down with an injury, that they can come away with this World Series?
I thought it was incredibly impressive. When I heard that Ronald Acuna went down in July, I didn't even know if the Braves were going to make the playoffs. There was the Phillies there right with them. There was the Mets there right with them, and DeGrom was healthy at the time and pitching maybe the best season ever. So I didn't even know if the Braves were going to make the playoffs, and then they did. They got 88 wins, and they just never looked back. Once they were in the playoffs, that's all that mattered. It didn't matter that they had the least amount of wins out of any team in the playoffs, or at least in the NL. They just kept winning, and they just did it the entire postseason, and it's very impressive to me that they just continued to win and got the World Series.
Yeah, it's one of those things that it doesn't really matter how you get to the playoffs, but once you get into the playoffs, every single team has a chance to go win the World Series, and that's what happened with the Atlanta Braves in that situation. Joe Veneziale, you talked about Jorge Soler ended up being named World Series MVP, one of those guys that the Braves ended up getting in the outfield to try and fix those outfield woes that ended up coming in the middle of the season when Acuna went down. So was the main story to you this rebuilt outfield of Duvall, you had Rosario, you had Soler, you had Jock Peterson?
Yeah, all of those guys that you mentioned especially put in very effective numbers for the Braves in the postseason and in the World Series. Obviously, Soler getting the MVP with the 3-run shot to put the Braves 7-0 over the Astros in that perspective. And with that rebuild sense, your best player goes down, Acuna, obviously you're going to have to rebuild on that infield with Freeman, Albies, and everybody else, Riley as well, to build around them and really make it fun for them. And that's what they did. Jock Peterson, really fun guy at the batter's plate, really hits the ball hard, at least 400 every time it's off the bat for Jock Peterson. Jocktober, as he got the nickname for a reason. And I love him, and especially Soler with the MVP. He did amazing as well. Guys hitting long bombs can't go wrong for baseball, especially to win the World Series.
Yeah, and it seemed like every single time that you're watching the broadcast during the World Series, they were mentioning about that rebuilt outfield there. And one of those big pieces, Brock, was Eddie Rosario, .383 average in the postseason. How impressive was he?
He was incredible. He slowed down a little bit toward the end of the World Series, but he got on seemingly every time going into the divisional series, the championship series. And without him, I don't even know if they make the World Series. Obviously, they were not favored in either series. The Brewers have a very good team. The Dodgers were probably the most talented team. and they were expected to win. But Eddie Rosario just kept getting on, kept scoring, and they won a lot because of him.
Yeah, and speaking of expecting to win, a lot of teams didn't really expect Atlanta to win once they were facing off teams like the Dodgers, and then heading into the World Series as well against a team like the Astros. Everybody mostly had the Astros pegged to win that series, and I think one of the biggest notes from that series was starting pitching. It was one of the lowest percentage of World Series games in which a starter went 5+ innings. So, Joe, how big of a storyline was that neither team was really able to get their starters to go for a good chunk of innings and had to rely on the bullpen? Or if you're Atlanta, they call them the night shift.
Oh, it's huge, especially, you're getting deep into that bullpen. Not a lot of guys in these pressure situations, especially if you're going down to the minimal guys that you have pitching in the bottom of the 7th inning to Jose Altuve. Don't want that for the Braves, especially when your starting pitcher only goes 4 innings. And pitching was definitely a big thing in this World Series, Riley. And, both teams catching both pitches, not a tip to the Astros, but both teams really connecting on balls. Both sides of the spectrum, especially with Austin Riley in the postseason against the Dodgers. Dodgers bullpen, in my opinion, were very lackluster during this postseason, which helped the Braves as well on both sides. So yeah, bullpen definitely a big storyline in these postseason and in the World Series.
Yeah, and the Dodgers, one of the strongest pitching staffs when it came heading into the postseason here, but the Braves able to get the job done against them. So Brock, Charlie Morton goes down early on in the World Series. Ian Anderson and Max Fried, just two of the guys that really stepped up and had some quality starts for the Braves to take over and defeat the Astros.
Yeah, Ian Anderson was very impressive. He hardly gave up any runs the entire postseason, and for a guy that young and that inexperienced, that's incredibly impressive what he did. And then Max Fried, he closed it out. He pitched Game 6, he started it, and he went 6 innings and handed it off to the night shift. So that's all they had to pitch was Max Fried and their best guys out of the bullpen. So those two guys really stepped up there.
Now, Brock, do you think that Atlanta has the chance to become a repeat champ next year?
I think they'll be a good team. I think they'll be back in the postseason, whether they win their division or not. But no, I don't think they have much of a chance to repeat. I think they got really, really lucky this year. They scored about 75% of their runs on home runs. That you can't keep that over a very long period of time, and they would have to get very lucky to do that again. Not that they're not a good team, but I just don't see them beating everyone again just like that.
No, I agree, Brock. And I do love Atlanta, especially with the team that they rebuilt, and I'd love to see them go on to the future. But no, definitely you have your powerhouses on both the AL and the NL. I have the Red Sox or the Brewers next year.
And Joe, you mentioned the Dodgers a little bit earlier. Do you think that they kind of lost their chance to come back into the World Series next year, that they blew their opportunity? Or do you think that next year they're still going to be a favorite team?
Oh, definitely next year they're still going to be a favorite team, especially, you have the powerhouse Scherzer and, Kershaw both at the pitching helm, and you have a bunch of talented players, especially with the acquisitions of Trey Turner and Max Scherzer. Just all in all, both really a talented team, but I don't think they're going to do what they did this year.
And Brock, the Astros might be on the risk of losing Carlos Correa. Do you think that's going to be something that happens to them in this in the offseason here?
I do. I think Carlos Correa is going somewhere else. I don't know exactly where yet. There's probably a good chunk of teams that really want Carlos Correa, but I don't think the Astros are going to be the ones that get him. They just don't have the money to persuade him to stay.
All right, thank you guys for a little bit of the World Series recap here. The Atlanta Braves winning the World Series for the first time since 1995. And when we come back on Plead Your Case, we're going to be hitting the gridiron with some NFL talk. Time to talk some NFL right here on Plead Your Case. We hit right around the midseason point in the NFL. Week 9 this upcoming Sunday and Thursday if you're going to watch Thursday Night Football. But a little bit of an interesting outlook right now in the NFL. The Kansas City Chiefs, the reigning AFC champs, are sitting at 4-4 this season and tied for last in the AFC West. Joe Veneziale, what in the world is going on with the Chiefs right now?
First of all, I wouldn't put all of the blame on Patrick Mahomes, as everybody would love to do, especially on all platforms that they can. Leader of the team, took him to the Super Bowl and the AFC Championship. But the one point that I do want to focus on is the defense. Was very popular, I should say, last year, especially with Tyrann Mathieu and a lot of the D-line, especially Chandler Jones. But the defense not producing as they should be, especially with the defensive backs. I see a lot of Chiefs games, guys getting over the top and over the middle, and not what they used to do. You had Tyrann Mathieu in the middle and Sorensen as well on the deep safety, covering those balls and making big plays for this Chiefs team to get Patrick Mahomes on the field. And Patrick Mahomes on the field, if he doesn't have that much time on the field, he's not going to produce like the way he is, and he's not producing at all, which I would like to point out as well, not hitting his receivers. But the main point that the Chiefs as a whole is the defense.
So arguably the most talented quarterback in the NFL right now, Patrick Mahomes. You're saying he doesn't deserve the criticism, Joe?
No.
Brock, do you agree with Joe on that point?
Listen, kind of. I think he deserves some of the blame. And some people are saying he deserves none of the blame. Some people are saying he deserves all the blame. He leads the NFL in picks. He's thrown 10 interceptions this year. And I know the O-line hasn't been great, but it hasn't been the worst O-line that he should be leading the league in picks. Over the last 2 seasons, he's played in 29 games and thrown 11 interceptions. This year, in 8, he's thrown 10 interceptions. He hasn't been as good. And, of course, the D just hasn't been very good at all. And one thing I want to point out about them is they've given up a ton of big plays. They've given up 11 passes over 40 yards so far this season. The second worst, 7. They haven't been good either.
Yeah, it's just tough all around for the Chiefs this year. I don't think really anybody predicted them to go 4-4 to start off the first 8 weeks of the season here for the Chiefs. But there's still a lot of time left in the season. Joe, do you think they make a playoff spot?
No, I don't think they make a playoff spot. And, especially if you're going to keep playing the way that he has been playing, especially, and I do want to backtrack on my thing. I do want to give some of the blame to Mahomes, especially with the interceptions and everything. But in the running back core, Clyde Edwards-Helaire not getting it done where he needs to be, and especially if you can't get a passing scheme going with Mahomes, the proclaimed most talented quarterback in the league right now. If you're going to go in with that attitude the rest of the season, I don't think they make the playoffs.
Yeah, Clyde Edwards-Helaire currently on the IR right now. They definitely need him to come back if they want to make a contribution here and try and get to the playoffs a little bit later into the season here. So, Brock, do you agree with Joe? Do you think that the Chiefs won't make the playoffs?
Absolutely not. They're the Chiefs. They've won the last couple of years. I mean, yeah, they haven't been good this year. They're 4-4. But the last couple of years, they went to the AFC Championship with Mahomes winning the MVP. They won the Super Bowl, and then when Mahomes went 14-1, they went to the Super Bowl again. They're going to turn it around. They might not be Super Bowl this year. I don't know, but they're going to make the playoffs, I'm sure.
So the team currently leading in the AFC West right now, the Las Vegas Raiders, and it's not a good look for the Raiders right now with everything that's happened with the Henry Ruggs situation, everything that's happened with the John Gruden situation. And Joe, let me ask you this. Do you think that the Raiders are going to be able to hold on to that number 1 spot in the AFC West to qualify for the playoffs?
I hope so. I really hope that they do. I do love Derek Carr, especially with everything going on around him. I feel like he's the center point of this Raiders team, which really is going to project them to do great things, whatever weapons that they have, whatever hardships that they lost. I feel like, as the leadership role, he's going to take all of his guys that he can, especially with Hunter Renfrow and Darren Waller on the offense. And I love the defense and what they're doing. I feel like they're going to keep going strong and make a good run with the end of the season.
So moving from the AFC West to the NFC West right now, the Los Angeles Rams, 7-1 on the season, pushing all of the chips to be all in right now after they traded 2 day 2 picks in next year's draft for Von Miller. Brock, do you like what the Rams are doing right now? They're trading a lot of picks, only have 3 in next year's draft.
Ooh, yeah, they're really going after it, and I can commend them for doing what they're doing, but I don't think I agree with it necessarily, because if they don't win a Super Bowl this year and then maybe they have a chance next year as well, if they don't win it, they put themselves in a ginormous hole. So they better win the Super Bowl if they want to keep being good like they are now. because if they don't, then I don't see them being good for maybe a decade.
Joe, do you think it's all worth it for the Los Angeles Rams here if they win that Super Bowl?
No, I do. I do believe that they're all worth it, and especially, you put those guys together, a bunch of veteran guys wanting to win. I love it. I love what they're doing. I wrote down here, it's a fun team with fun guys doing fun things because they want to have fun. And that's true because Matt Stafford being good is good for the NFL, and they're having a lot of fun, especially bringing in the electricity with Von Miller, and especially just adding to that superior defense in the NFC. They're going to be a tough team to beat, and I love to see what they're doing.
Yeah, glad to see Matt Stafford on a really competitive team right now, but his former team not doing so well at the midseason point in the NFL. The Detroit Lions still winless in the NFL. Brock, do you think that they're going to pick up a win this season, or are they going to be the first 0-17 team?
That would be hilarious just if the Lions went 0-17 after they were the first 0-16 team, but I think they'll win. They're not that bad. They're bad, and they might end up with the first pick, but they're bound to beat someone. And they've come very, very close a couple of times with incredibly unlucky situations happening at the end of games where they already lost. So at some point, they're going to pick up a win, probably. I'm not going to bet on it, but probably they'll pick up a win at some point.
Yeah, during the first couple of weeks of the season, this Lions team was pretty resilient out there. But we're going to bounce back over to the NFC West right now. And the Rams at 7-1. They're in tight competition with the Arizona Cardinals sitting at 7-1. Joe, just how impressive have the Cardinals been this season?
Oh, very impressive, especially with Kyler Murray playing at his peak performance, I should say. Having DeAndre Hopkins being on the injury reserve a little bit here and there, questionable for some games, but all in all being healthy, and when he is healthy, he does very well for them, and especially their defense putting up minimal points. Their opponents, I should say, putting up minimal points on them, and like I said, Kyler producing with all of his talents that he has, especially with the acquisition of James Conner. James Conner coming from the Steelers, not getting enough productivity there, but getting a lot of playing time there and getting a lot of touches. And yeah, they're hitting on all cylinders and probably will continue on the rest of the season.
Speaking of the Pittsburgh Steelers, right now James Conner's former team, the Steelers, sit at 4-3 this season so far. Brock, do you think that they're going to catch a playoff spot? Now, right now, if the season ended today, they would get a playoff spot, but do you think they'll finish out the rest of the season strong?
No, I don't think they're going to make the playoffs. They'll probably come close. They'll be maybe 9-8. They could maybe get 10 wins or something, but I don't see them making the playoffs. I don't think they're as good as the Ravens. I don't think they're as good as the Browns when they're healthy either. And the Bengals have been tremendous so far this season. So arguably they're the worst team in their division. They're not bad. They're just in a tough division, and they're not great either. So I don't see them catching a playoff spot.
I disagree with you. I disagree with you 100%. I do agree with you on that they are the worst team in the division, but I feel like they are very competitive, especially with the Ravens and the Browns. I don't think the Ravens and the Browns are as good as people think to be because the Steelers have been seeing a lot of a different Browns team and probably going to see a different Ravens team. But that Bengals team, like you said, I do agree with you on that. They are very, very, very good. But I do think the Steelers will finish strong, at least with 12 wins. That's my prediction.
Well, that's all the time that we have for the NFL topic right here on Plead Your Case. But when we come back, we'll still be on the gridiron, this time talking college football as the postseason rankings have just dropped. The college football rankings have just dropped on Tuesday night. Sitting at number 1 is Georgia, number 2 is Alabama, number 3 Michigan State, and number 4 Oregon. Brock, do you think that the committee got this right and that this should be the top 4 teams that we should see at the end of the season, or are there some teams that are excluded that you think should be in?
No, they didn't get it right. I didn't exactly expect them to get it right, but I don't think they did. I think Ohio State needs to be in there. They started the season off not so strong, but as of late, they've looked really, really good and perhaps the second best team in the country. And otherwise, I think that they got 3 of the teams right. And I know Oregon beat Ohio State, but they've looked really weak lately, and I don't think that they deserve to be over Ohio State just because they got an early season victory over them.
Yeah, no complaints there, Brock. Especially, the committee is very shoddy, especially with picking these teams that deserve to be in. And I do agree with you. Ohio State does have to be in, especially beating Penn State this past week, doing a really solid job at that. But one team that I do believe should be in the top 4 over Oregon is Cincinnati. Cincinnati started off the season undefeated, only having 1 loss right now, but should be in that top 3 spot.
Wow. So, Joe, you're putting the first Group 5 program in the college football playoffs here. If you were on the committee and you were the guy making the selection right here, Brock, do you think that it could ever come to a point where we could see a Group 5 program like Cincinnati make it into the college football playoffs?
We could. Right now, I have Cincinnati sitting at number 5, so just outside. So if you see, Michigan State lose, which they might, they have Ohio State coming up. If you see Alabama lose another game, then they're definitely out. So Cincinnati could find themselves being the first Group 5 team getting in there, but I think that they just don't play strong enough competition that they're going to get in without someone above them losing.
So, Joe, it's Plead Your Case. This is the name of the show. Plead your case on why Cincinnati should be in there.
Oh, no, they definitely should be in there. I want to plead my case. And my case right now is that they're the only Group 5 team to make the college football playoff, and I want to make that happen because they deserve it. They came out undefeated, top in the rankings, top 10 to start off the season already before they played any games. And they're showing what they can do as a Group 5 program in this college football playoff. And if they're going to make the wins that they have and put in Alabama with the losses that they have, I feel like they should be in there. They had Michigan State coming up to that top 3 position because they deserved it, going undefeated, beating a very good Michigan team. And if Cincinnati can't do the same, then this committee's got to go. Put me on there, Riley, because I just pleaded my case for them.
I love it. I love the enthusiasm right here, Joe. So the team ranked number 8 right now in the college football playoff rankings is Oklahoma. We've seen a lot of Oklahoma in the past with the college football playoffs. No Spencer Rattler at quarterback, Caleb Williamson at quarterback. Brock, could the Sooners make a jump here to get into the college football playoffs?
That's going to be tough for them because they don't have really hard games coming up either. Their hard games coming into the season were supposed to be teams like Texas, who are now unranked in 500 in their record. So, yeah, they're undefeated, but they haven't played much competition either in a weak Big 12 year, and they've had a lot of really close games. One of them was the first game of the year against Tulane, who, by the way, Cincinnati stayed very, very close to their last game. So it's going to be tough for either of those teams to get in just because of, number one, their competition, and number two, Tulane only has 1 win. So the fact that both of them were close to them for so long, it's going to be a hard argument to put them in over some of these other teams.
Yeah, Caleb Williams is going to have a convincing rest of the season for the committee here if they want to make their way into the college football playoffs like how they have done in the past many of times. Joe, do you think the Sooners can find their way into a college football playoff spot?
No, I don't think so, and especially with the how they've been playing, and they have a good team, they have a good foundation. With Spencer Rattler, a quarterback, coming in doing what he did, but not doing what he did, what he was supposed to do, I should say, and the expectations that he had, barely beating that Texas game, barely beating Auburn, and they're scraping away with these victories, and if they keep doing that, I don't think they're going to make the playoff.
So if neither of these two teams in Georgia or Alabama lose the rest of the season, do you think that the SEC championship game is even going to matter, Brock?
No, I don't, because if Alabama beats Georgia, that'll be Georgia's only loss, and if Georgia beats Alabama, and assuming Alabama dominates the rest of the season, they have Auburn at Auburn to end the year. So if they can win that game, even pretty convincingly, then I think they can still maybe grab a spot in there. It'll be tough, though, because if Cincinnati and Oklahoma both go undefeated and Alabama loses for a second time, you might find Cincinnati or Oklahoma grabbing that last spot with an undefeated record. So for Georgia, no, it won't matter. But for Alabama, it could matter a lot.
Yeah, those interesting conversations are going to have to had if that would happen for Alabama there, because if they have that record like how you say they would, Brock, and then you have teams like Cincinnati and Oklahoma pretty much right in there in the picture, and the committee picks Alabama, it's going to cause a lot of conversations on should they expand the college football playoffs, or is the committee just favoring Alabama just because of the brand name of Alabama? But Joe, do you think that the committee should expand the college football playoffs if we have a tight finish here?
I do. I do, especially if you're going to have a tight finish, like you said, that we are assuming is going to happen, with Alabama assumingly dominating the rest of the season, like Brock said, and Georgia dominating the rest of the season, as Brock said as well. And if Georgia keeps doing what they are doing, blowing out teams by large margin, good teams at that matter, I don't think it will have to extend. But if Alabama does the same thing, I think they might have to.
Well, thank you, Brock Owens. Thank you, Joe Veneziale. I'm Riley Holsinger, and this has been another episode of Plead Your Case. We hope you enjoyed our content here on Plead Your Case, as well as all of our other content right here on WCTV.
This has been a production of Waynesburg Community Television.